Welcome to the channel. Today we find out, is the ARKEN SH4 to 16 the greatest battlefield implement known to mankind? Or is it another Chinesium crappy optic? Let's get into it. So if you look around on YouTube, you'll see a lot of videos out there that are hyping this scope up, saying it is this amazing scope, it's so awesome. Some have said it's as good as like $1,500 scopes or $2,000 scopes that is punching well above its weight. Ironic, because it weighs about 2 pounds. But, you know, there's a ton of information out there, so I figured why not get a hold of one for $350 with a mount and see what the hype's all about. I'm going to cut right to the chase. Is this the best scope ever? No. Is it worth soyjacking over? Oh, I'm going to do that in the thumbnail, by the way. No, it is not worth soyjacking over. Does the scope function? It does act like a scope. It does function. And does it function as advertised? We'll get into that. And does it stand on its own, not comparing it to other scopes? Potentially. So what am I looking for in a scope in general? So me personally, I'm not somebody that shoots PRS, so I'm not doing long distance competition shooting. I'm not somebody that's looking for the most expensive optic out there or the best glass. I'm also not one who typically tries to spend only $350 on a scope. But I try to be somebody that I want a scope that I can range with a good reticle. I want a scope, mostly I was looking for an AR-10 scope. And my thought process behind an AR-10 in general is kind of a gun where I can set up somewhere and take some long distance shots. And long distance to me means like 800 yards, 900 yards in that range. So 308 is great for that. It has pretty good ballistics and hits the target pretty well. I was shooting at 600 yards with 308 and there was tons of wind and it was just pile driving right in there. So that's something where 223 wouldn't do as well at. And so that's kind of why I wanted to build an AR-10. Well, I wanted a scope that kind of complements that. And in that vein, weight wasn't a huge issue with that, although to you it might be. But my biggest thing was ranging with the reticle, clarity of glass, especially at the high end of things. But I also wanted something that if I needed to shoot some up-close shots that I could do so on the 4X side of things. If I really, and we'll get into why this isn't like the best battle rifle scope, but if I really wanted to get up-close shots, then I'd just run an offset red dot. I prefer to run a top-mounted red dot, but as you can see, you can't run that with this optic. Ease of follow-up shots is a big deal for me. A big part of that comes with glass clarity. A big objective lens was a big part of that. So this is a 50mm objective lens. That is huge and lets in a lot of light. And that's really important when you're trying to observe things far away and shoot things far away, is being able to follow up your shots. It has some negatives, like I'll get some shots of the bezel on this. It got dicked up a little bit. But it's also, you know, it's a very sturdy optic. I'll give it that as far as the actual tube. It's a very like chunky, sturdy tube, and I really like that in a battle rifle. Decent low end and high end. So that's a big deal to me. So being able to observe things and shoot shots at a low end as well as at a high end, clarity and glass and everything like that should translate to that. Another one that's big for me is simplicity of use. I don't want something too crazy. One thing I did notice with this is that it does have a pretty good reticle. It uses just mil, so mil is pretty easy once you learn how to read mil and everything like that. the last thing I was looking for in a scope like this is first focal plane. And why first focal plane is important in a scope of what I'm trying to use it for is that I don't want to have to figure out, if I want to look at something at 8x, I want it to be able to hit dead on. And if I want to look at something at 4x, at 16x, I want it to be the exact same holds. I don't want to have to try to figure out the math on that. And especially that big of a range of a 4 to 16, pretty much once you get above 6x on any scope, especially outside of an LPVO, you want first focal plane. It's going to make your life a lot easier, and second focal plane just has lots of inherent issues with ranging and trying to figure out where your holds are. Now, what are some features of this that are significant, memorable, things that you might not see in other reviews? So it's illuminated. The illumination is pointless. Outside of a dimly lit room, you're not going to be able to see it. I'm not really looking for illumination in a scope like this anyway. I don't care. It doesn't bother me either way. But that's just something to know if that's a big deal for you. Another thing that I've seen that people hype up about this, like, oh, the turrets are so good. I've had this turret pop off, and I don't know if you noticed earlier, but this turret has come off like 4 or 5 times.
Hold up. Look what just popped off. It's a feature of the Arken scope.
4 or 5 times, and I've had that one pop off a couple times. This one you could say is my fault, the top turret, just because of installing the zero stop. I tightened them down to where they're supposed to be, and they still popped off. The side turret, however, I didn't touch at all, and it popped off multiple times. So probably something that you need to Loctite on the screws and hope that they stay in. I was not impressed with the turrets at all. But that is something that people have brought up. Oh, like, the turrets are so good. Well, if they're so good, why are they popping off with honestly not hard use? I haven't been dropping this gun. I haven't been throwing it off a mountain. I haven't been drop testing it. Just been using it like a normal human being. But I also don't like baby my guns, so maybe that's why. Another feature that people have not brought up is the included mount. It's actually really good. I don't know what it's made of. I have no idea what they claim it's made out of. I just know that it has 3 screws that mount on your Picatinny rail, which is great. 3 screws is awesome. And then it's got, you know, the normal amount of screws on top. But it's an excellent looking mount. Performs very well. It's a 34 millimeter mount, and I was really impressed because they included it with the scope, and I figured I would have to go out of my way to buy like a Badger mount or something like that. But no, this mount has been perfect. One thing to note that was really interesting about this was the reticle. The reticle itself is excellent. When you look in the world of scopes, there's like 50 to 70% of scopes, in my opinion, don't have a reticle that makes me want to buy the scope. They're either too complex, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, that's for a different market, or they're just not usable to range, and I don't know why you would even just having basic mill hash marks would go a long way and really isn't. It's just a reticle design. Like any scope could incorporate that. So there are so many scopes out there that have a crappy reticle. This has an excellent, well thought out reticle. The only issue is on the glass. The glass has an issue with keeping up with the reticle. So on 4 to about 7 power, this reticle is unusable. You can't see it on the low end of things, even with the brightness. So unless it was like dark out and you had the brightness on, and then you'd probably be able to see it, but it washes out on everything. And I think that's partly due to glass quality and partly due to the first focal plane being too far away, so you're not able to actually see the 4x, which is a real bummer because I really wanted to enjoy the 4x. When you get it to like 8 to 9 to 10x, this scope really shines. The glass quality is awesome for the price. It's probably comparable to Primary Arms is not their silver line, but their mid-tier line. I'm forgetting what that's called, but anyway, it's a pretty good glass when you get it to that 8. It just sucks that on 4X it's unusable. It's not due to eye box. You can adjust your eye however you want. It's just it washes out. It's not usable. On 16X it's good. It's good. So from about 8 to 16X, it's a usable scope. You get below that, unusable, it's a bummer. It really is, and I really wanted to like that. The next thing is this top turret. So everybody loves the top turret on this scope, and that's because I think they designed it for PRS in mind, precision shooting, and for that I'm sure it's great. For me, not so great. I don't need a giant turret right there. I think even if they went half as high, it would still accomplish exactly what you want it to do, and would maybe allow you to run a top dot. And that's a big deal for me, because I have night vision, so I'd prefer to be able to mount a top dot and be able to use that as passive aiming. And with the 4X not working on this, I would really prefer to have that as an option. Now, I already told you my use case. I'm not planning on taking up close shots with this. However, in the event that I needed to take up close shots, especially where my range is limited to 8 to 16, where I kind of need a red dot with this, yeah, I want that peace of mind. So top dot would be nice. Like I said, you could just do an offset red dot, which works. It's just, you know, like if you're set up and you need to pull up to a 1X, I don't want to have to flip my rifle to the side if I don't have to, if I'm already like in a position. So I don't know. It's maybe I'm just nitpicking on this $350 scope, but I feel like this design, there's like a 1/4 of an inch of empty just air in there, and they could have made that smaller. So yeah, that's kind of a bummer for me. Both the glass and that. Those were my biggest issues with this particular scope. Now, how does it stand on its own? So if you compare, let's take comparisons out. How do I look at this scope? Well, I like it for what I bought it for, but barring those couple of issues, I think that it is a pretty good scope on its own. I'd probably give it a 6 or a 7 out of 10. The main drawback to me is the fact that I can't use it in the 4X, and the fact that the turrets keep popping off. But that's, I know, I could probably just Loctite that and take care of that problem if I needed to use this scope. But yeah, the lack of the low end kills me. Now, how does it compare to the rest of the field? Taking it out of, just comparing it to itself, it says a standalone. So how does it compare to the field? It is a very value-oriented optic. I feel like you could get something maybe in the Vortex realm or the Leupold realm. One of those two brands would probably have something that's worthwhile that maybe won't have maybe won't have the giant objective lens, but it'll probably be built a little bit better. It won't be 2 pounds. And I think at the end of the day, when it comes down to it, the weight can really hinder you when you have that much weight on the top of your rifle moving to side to side. Now, like I said, weight wasn't a huge consideration in this, but I think people are trying to take this scope with really good glass for what it is and trying to apply it into places like hunting and stuff like that, where unless you're set up hunting, I probably wouldn't take this hunting. Now, I'm not a big hunter myself, but I know that weight is a big component of that. And I feel like you could just get a cheap Leupold $200 3 to 9 scope and call it a day on that. So I don't know. If that was, if you were looking in the budget realm, plus it's sitting a little high for a hunting scope anyway. Yeah, it's just, I don't know. It wouldn't be the best if weight is what you're going after, not the best scope for that. Now, should you buy this scope? maybe. If you have a use case where this works, if you're trying to do like a cheap precision rifle loadout, I guess. Although cheap and precision shooting really don't go hand in hand. So maybe like 22 precision shooting, that might be the play. But yeah, I don't know. I wouldn't recommend this scope to friends or family or anything like that. What I would probably recommend as an alternative is Primary Arms has a 3 to 18 scope that's in their mid-tier category. Probably recommend that as a better use case and what I'll probably end up buying and going with in the future. It's lighter, the turrets I like better on, and the glass is a little bit better. Also, it actually works at 3x and doesn't, from what I've seen, I haven't fully tested it yet. I've just played around with it at SHOT Show and played around with one of their 4 to 16s as well in that mid-tier range, and I think it does, for a couple $100 more, it does things better. One last thing to note, when you compare it to other scopes in this category, one last consideration, a real advantage of this is the parallax adjustment, and I want to notate that is killer on a scope like this. For this price, being first focal plane, having parallax, that's a big deal. Most scopes don't have that in this price range, and even like you get into like the mid-tier or like budget mid-tier ish, like $800,000-$900,000 scopes from like Trigicon, they still don't have a parallax adjustment. Blows my mind. That is a big deal. So keep that in mind. It's definitely something worth looking into. So thanks for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed this chat we had here about the Arken greatest scope ever made. The pores are super hyped about this one. If you enjoyed it, watch the ads on the video and don't have ad block installed. Or I'll have some links down below as well, some affiliate links if you'd like to click them. I make a little bit of money on there. Not worth a ton, but it's definitely a little something. So appreciate you watching. Thanks.